Hello there. Welcome to the 36th episode of the SPS podcast. This episode is a performance origins deep dive episode where I go deep with a large content creator and discuss their journey, their struggles, and the things that they had to overcome. And in this episode, I'm very pleased to have Eddy Quan as my guest. Let's get into it. Welcome. Hello. We are in episode 36 of the SPS podcast, and we are doing a deep dive episode. And today, joining me is Eddy, War on Weakness on Twitter. He's got over 100,000 followers. Eddy escaped the 9-to-5, and now it's his mission to help you do the same by improving your writing skills. It's one of the most interesting accounts on Twitter. He's also got a great passion for movies, which we'll probably talk about a little bit. The movies are important to Eddy's content. If you follow him, if you don't already, 100% go and check out at War on Weakness on Twitter. But Eddy, welcome. Thank you very much for joining me on the SPS podcast. It's fantastic to have you. We've talked before. We've been in different chat rooms before. I think you're a follower that I selected years ago. A couple of years ago when I was starting my Twitter journey. I've always been super inspired by your work, but thank you for being on the podcast, and it's awesome to have you here.
Thanks for having me, Stephen. Yeah, I'm pumped to be here, man. It's I'm glad we're talking about a topic that I'm very passionate about: performance, quitting the 9-to-5, leaving it out behind.
Yeah, let's do this. Yeah, man. Well, we'll jump into it. So, to start off, I ask this question to all my guests that jump on the podcast. What is your personal philosophy around performance or success? What's your personal philosophy around that?
Okay, so that's quite an interesting question, right? And I'm glad that you're asking me it now, because there was a period of my life, and I think like a lot of entrepreneurs and people who work for themselves go through this, where you discover this magical thing called self-improvement. So for some people, that's like mindset stuff. For some people, that's like fixing their habits. For some people, that's as simple as just getting to the gym. So people come into the self-improvement world at all different angles. For me, it was reading, what would be considered popular self-improvement literature. So I remember like when I first got I think it was like my first professional job. One of my friends who I used to go to high school with, we used to catch the same bus into work. And one day he had Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People on him. And I thought that was a really cheesy name for a book. And I was like, I started making fun of him.
Yeah.
And he said, you know what, this book's actually, I know it's got a very cheesy name, but it's actually a really, really useful book. It's going to teach you a lot of social skills and things like that. So I picked it up, I read it. I was 18, 19 at this time. And so to an 18, 19-year-old me, the idea of just being more social and treating everyone with that extra 10% of respect that you wouldn't normally do it was a life-changing lesson. Yeah. And so from there, I just went down this path of like consuming a bunch of different self-improvement literature. And that went on for about, honestly, like 5-10 years, where I was just like consuming self-improvement stuff. Self-improvement porn is as it's commonly known as.
yes.
Self-improvement game. But what I've done now in the last 5 years of like having my own business, of being completely independent, it's, you can read every book about habits, about performance, about productivity that you can, but to me personally, it's just about doing the same boring, high-level tasks over and over and over again, and never getting bored of it, and just sticking to your craft and being consistent over a long period of time. And the problem with that is that there's nothing sexy about that.
No.
Right. But it's what works. And so, like, to me as a writer, if you look at my business, like I'm a ghostwriter, that's where I make most of my income. My day-to-day routine, it's really damn boring, man. Like, I wake up early, I get my morning sunlight. Shout out to Andrew Huberman for that. I go for a walk, come back, have breakfast. I do a couple of hours of client work. I have lunch. I go to the gym, I come back, I do a couple more hours of client work, and then I spend a couple of hours, relaxing, hanging out with my girlfriend, and then I go to bed and I do the same thing again.
Yep.
Right? It's super super boring. But as long as I do, as long as I get my daily steps in, as long as I get my daily gym in, as long as I do my client work, as long as I do my content creation, as long as I can do 4 or 5 high ROI tasks and I can do them every single day forever, like I'm good.
Yes.
So like I've actually read less books that compared to my previous life this year than I have in every other year, but I've gotten more done, and I've gotten more done by just keeping up with the exact same thing and just making sure I'm getting my high ROI tasks in every single day, because as long as I do that, the victory eventually comes.
Yeah, I love that. There's so many little small things I could pull out from that to ask you a follow-up question. There's so much of it similar to how I look at it. There's one train of thought when you were saying about the boring stuff. Kind of reminds me of like playing like an open world video game where you run around for like 2 or 3 hours doing really mundane shit so you can actually face the next boss, and then you have your like 20 minutes of excitement as you're playing against the boss, and then you go back to doing a whole bunch of mundane shit, running around finding keys and doing boring stuff before you actually get the win. And the win for us in business would be signing the client, getting that big, getting that big reward, because we can go weeks without getting those big wins. Some people might be days, might be weeks, might be months for other people, depending on the type of offer you have. So it is about doing that boring stuff in between the wins that keep things ticking over.
So I got an interesting story about that exact point. So I was talking to a couple of friends who they paid something like 30 or 36K in a year, over a course of a year, right, for a very, very high ticket coaching program.
Yeah.
That's related to marketing. And I asked them, I said, was it worth it? They said, yeah, it's definitely worth it. And I said, okay, so what was the cool thing and what was the bad thing about this program? And they said, well, the cool thing is actually the same thing as the bad thing. So they were saying, this program, they teach you so much. There's so much value in it. So they teach you Instagram ads, they teach you Facebook ads, they teach you email marketing, they teach you high ticket sales. All these things that you need to run like a high ticket agency / coaching business. But because it's so valuable, the downside is that you get distracted. You want to do everything. You want to run Instagram ads, you want to do Facebook, you want to do Twitter, you want to do cold email. And because you're trying to do everything, you're not getting anything done.
Yeah.
When the answer is just, all I need to do is just run more ads, send more cold DMs, and book more calls. That's the only thing we have to do to grow our business. Because what happened was, before they joined the program, a friend of theirs had told them, they said, listen, you guys don't need this coaching program. All you need to do is just send more DMs, run more ads, book more calls.
Yeah.
And so they spent a year doing this program, which was super valuable, to go back full circle and come back and say, oh, so all I need to do was just run more ads, send more cold DMs, and book more calls.
Yeah. It's funny. It's hilarious. It's like that bell curve where you see the caveman, and then the guy crying at the top, and then the Jedi kind of like guy at the end. It says, send more DMs, book more calls. No, I need a $36,000 program, and then send more.
So I often ask myself, Stephen, like I think that when we get stuck, we have a tendency to overcomplicate the problem that we're facing, right?
Yeah.
We have a tendency to be like, okay, there's something missing here. There's something missing here. Maybe there wasn't anything missing. Maybe it's just we're just impatient or we're bored, and we literally just need to just stop being a coward and just keep going.
Keep doing the same old boring. I really, really like that. Keep doing the same old boring stuff that works, because I my philosophy, revolves around doing less dumb shit, and I often look at the dumb shit as the stuff that's distracting me from my core business, which is write good content, send good emails, get clients on calls. Yes, I could probably do more outreach, but my goal is to have a really good inbound system where things come to me, and that means improving my writing, telling better stories, having a personal brand that people want to work. Like people want to work with me. Oh, people do want to work with me, but you know what I mean. There's a more of a lineup to the queue, if that makes sense, to the door. and that's my goal to do that. But I can tell you, I get distracted with that. I'm like, should I be doing this? Should I be doing that? Should I be doing this? But again, you have to push all that dumb shit and that noise away, and then focus on what you're actually doing. Because I can tell a quick personal story. I got COVID a month ago, or 3 or 4 weeks ago, and I was out. Just couldn't write any more threads. Couldn't. My emails just went down to really basic, kind of almost repeating stuff I'd said before, just to keep them ticking over. Back end of November through to today, I've had more phone calls booked, and I've had more client calls. When I'm even on COVID, jumping on sales calls because they were booked because I didn't remove my Calendly link. And I had a lot of success over the last few weeks being sick and taking a step back from my business. And I put that down to the 4, 5, 6 months of mundane, boring stuff that I kept doing over the last 6 months. And when I actually took a step back from it, it all, I didn't say it didn't break the dam, but it definitely resulted in my business keeping the momentum going, even though I wasn't putting my foot on the gas, if that makes sense.
Absolutely makes sense. Yeah, it goes back to what I was just saying. Like I don't know, when things stop working for us, we just it's like a switch in our head. Like we're like, there's something here we gotta fix, and we go looking for other problems, or as you say, looking for dumb shit to do.
Yeah. So we almost make a problem up that we didn't even have. And then we go and learn that stuff. Like, I've got to go and learn cold email. So you go and buy a cold email course and spend hours learning cold email, and then you figure out that it might work for you, but it was just an extra layer of skill that you were building you didn't actually need. It happens to a lot of people in solopreneurship, 100%. So switching gears a little bit, I really like that sort of idea about your personal philosophy. It's like doing the same high leverage things repeatedly and not falling out of love with doing those actions. It's a good philosophy. But if I could ask you, going back 5 or 10 years, let's talk about your journey, because you're in Colombia currently. You're from Australia. You were working 9 to 5. Where did this? You've been an entrepreneur for 5 years. You're probably one of the most legit ghostwriters. There's a handful of you on Twitter. You're one of them on Twitter. What was that journey? And then within that journey, what was the biggest struggle or the biggest sort of performance issue that you had to overcome to get to where you are today?
Great question. So I'll try and fast forward the story because it's quite a long story. I had a job in finance because when I was going through university, all I wanted to do, well, when I was going through university, I wanted a job that paid well, and I wanted a job that was stable. And so, like, accountancy and finance was like the most obvious thing. I was like, well, if I get a finance degree, they're like, there's no job. Like, everyone needs an accountant, everyone needs someone in finance. So I'm just going to go do business in university. So, as a ignorant 18-year-old, you're not thinking about any other thing aside from money and job stability. That's the only two things that matter. Well, that's a lie, actually. Number 3 was status, because this is not very commonly discussed, but like a lot of people, all 18-year-olds when they go into university, they're not just thinking about money. They're thinking about social status. Like, that might not be like a popular thing to say, but like there are people who have become doctors because society values that profession. Like it's like a high status profession. And so there was definitely an element of that. There was definitely an element of me like thinking, oh, I'm going to be this like hotshot Wall Street banker guy, right? And honestly, that's the main reason why I chose this profession. Well, little did I know that my personality doesn't like authority. So I would say inside of like the first 3 months of my first professional job as a 21-year-old with zero experience, with absolutely zero right to have the arrogance that I did not like authority. I did not like people who were 5-10 years ahead of me barking orders at me. I felt there were times where I felt I'm smarter than this person. The only reason why he's making more money than me or he has a better job than me is because he's just been here longer than me. Right? That's how arrogant I was in my head. And what I didn't realize was that I truly believe, Stephen, that some people are just made to be workers and some people are made to be entrepreneurs. I don't think there's anything good or bad about that. I think it's just a personality thing.
Yeah.
But I knew right off the bat that I was not going to survive in an environment where I had to become the bottom of a hierarchy and work my way up. I had to play all these office politics games to get to the top if I wanted to get to the top. So I was not having any of that. And then about 12 months into my first professional job, I spent 2 weeks vacation in Malaysia backpacking with my best friends from high school. And I met this Canadian guy who was the opposite of me. So like instead of going to university, he he worked at a pizza shop, bought a secondhand car, sold the car, and used that money to go backpacking around Asia with his girlfriend. Like that, he had the complete opposite.
Oh, yeah.
And this guy was like, my age, backpacking around Asia, visiting all these countries, just being a poor English teacher and having the time of his life. Like he just seemed so happy. And after I met him, I was like, it's not fair that I make more money than this guy, I work hard than this guy, and I'm more unhappy than this guy. Something is wrong here. And so I said, all right. So back then, my company had a plan where they're like, if you stuck around for a year after you got your master's, they would pay for the master's completely. But you have to get your master's while you were with them, and then you have to stay for a year after. So I said, all right, cool, I'm going to do this. And once my master's is fully paid for, I'm going to quit my job and travel around the world for 12 months. And then I'll figure out what to do with my life. I would say 6 months into that trip, I was like, I am never going back to the office again. I will flip burgers at McDonald's if I have to. I don't know what I'm going to do with my life, but I cannot stomach another crappy meeting, another passive-aggressive email from HR, another bullshit small conversation at the water fountain because the big boss is there. I have to pretend to speak like I'm interested in him.
Yeah.
I couldn't stand that anymore. And so... But at the same time, I was broke. I was a backpacker. I had no money. I was just living off my savings.
Yeah.
So go back a little bit. I was living with my parents the entire time on a pretty decent corporate salary. So I was saving a lot of money, but I just
smart.
But like I spent all that money traveling, and so it got to the point where like I'm down to like my last $5,000. Like it's not gonna last forever. I need to figure out a way. But I'm not getting a fucking job. I'm not getting an office job. I'm not getting an office job. And so as anyone who's desperate in that situation, I went to google.com and I typed in how to make money on the internet, how to make money online. That's what led me to discover the skill set called copywriting. And then I basically just devoured a bunch of books around copywriting. And then through there, I went to freelancing. That's how I got my first paying client. Then I discovered Twitter, and then through Twitter, I built a personal brand, and through my personal brand, I got more clients, and then yada yada yada. That's how my business grew. Going back to your question about what was the biggest performance change?
Yeah, struggle.
I would say
change.
going from thinking as an employee, where people are just like. The good thing about having a job, and I don't mean this disrespectfully, I sincerely mean this, is that you show up to work, you know exactly what you have to do, you do the work, you go home, you don't have any responsibilities beyond just doing your job.
Yeah.
When you work for yourself, you are responsible for the results that you get.
Yes.
And so, like, you have to take full responsibility for a lot of things that you don't take responsibility for as an employee.
Yeah.
You have to you own everything. So, like, if you do something and it doesn't go bad, it doesn't go well, like that's on you. Whereas when you're an employee, you can kind of be like, oh well, it's the company. Like I'm just one person here.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I'm just here collecting my monthly salary. It doesn't matter. Whereas here, like if I fuck up, my revenue goes down.
Yes.
Right. And so I have to like. And also the other thing is I have to think about my future. Like when I'm in my job, it's just like, yeah, my monthly salary is coming. I'm not going to get fired. Like, I'm just going to, I have a 5-year plan to become a manager and whatever.
Yeah.
But I'm not really thinking far ahead, and I'm not really thinking about the long-term consequences of my actions.
Yes.
So I would say going from employee to entrepreneurial mindset, that's a complete game changer.
I love that. because I've struggled with that recently. I have.
Hmm.
Uh, what it'll be 2 years in April, May next year that I'll have the 2 year calendar of me officially being a full time entrepreneur. And I would argue that the first 6 months of me leaving my corporate job last year in 2021, I it didn't really. I don't know. I don't know if I made that switch fast enough or it didn't kick in. But your comprehension of what 100% responsibility means changes. Because
Yeah,
what you thought 100% responsibility was in your corporate job, when someone asked me when I was working corporate and someone said how much responsibility, how responsible are you for your life, I would have said 100%, 100%.
yeah, of course.
But 6 months later, after being an entrepreneur for 6 months, I'm like, that guy had no fucking clue. He wasn't 100%
Yeah,
responsible for his life. He was like
yeah,
80,
yeah,
75.
yeah.
So like
At
my
most.
at most, yeah. So my comprehension of 100% responsibility expanded. And yeah, I honestly, the ad you said about having your last $5,000, I was down to not quite something similar because I had a decent amount of money in savings and investments and stocks, but I never want to touch those. Never want to touch those. Those are untouchable. But I was getting to that back end of that sort of a money that I put away, that runway that I created, and that motivation made me like, fuck it, I'm just going straight to getting people on calls. And then all of a sudden I started signing clients because I was trying to sell a course and then upsell some people with the sort of the Russell Brunson type value ladder thing where you sell a course and then send people a bunch of emails and get them on a call, and it wasn't working for me. And then I just scrapped that and went straight to like throwing a calendar link underneath my tweets, and then all of a sudden, boom. And that mindset came from, I'm not making money this way, so I need to change. I need to change what I'm
Yeah,
doing. But within a corporate
yeah,
environment, I'd probably still be doing the course with the emails, just doing the same thing over and over again because there's no responsibility for me to get the result. This is what I've been told to do. This is what I'm doing. If that makes
yeah,
sense. If that, yeah.
yeah.
So,
And even like when I was working corporate, man, like there were moments, I would say, like overall, I was not a great employee, but there were moments where I wanted to take initiative. And I would be like, this SOP doesn't make any sense, or this company policy doesn't make any sense. And with positive intentions, I would go to my boss and be like, hey, what do you think about this? And like, what do I think about changing this? And they'd be like, you're like way out of line here. Like, why are you trying to improve anything? Like, just do
yep.
your job. Basically, what they would tell me.
I've had that exact same conversation. I've
Yeah,
literally, when I was working in my last corporate job as a leader, another leader, fairly reputable senior, been there for a number of years, literally having lunch with me, said, Steve, why are you always trying to change things? What are you doing?
yeah,
Like
yeah,
and I'm because it's my personality. It's I can't. It's like who I am. I
yeah,
believe in it. I believe in change. I believe that we should try to do things better.
yeah.
Um,
Yeah,
uh,
little did I know that was like gasps of my entrepreneurial spirit coming out, but I didn't recognize it back then. I just thought, well, these morons just want to, they don't think about these things. They don't care.
yeah. I very
Um,
very similar to that. But I instead of thinking entrepreneurially, I made this mistake of because I love leadership. I used to read leadership books like they were like Smarties, just like love the leadership concept, the Simon Sinek's, the Dan Pinks, all that stuff. And my goal when I was getting my shit together in my late 20s, early 30s, I went for that up the ladder because I went the higher I go, the more I can affect change. But the higher I went, the just the more stressed out I was because people don't want to change even at the higher level. They don't like they it just it would blow my mind. I would be at six-figure level in the corporate land, and I'd be talking to other leaders, and I'd be like, "Oh, hey, I read this great book over the last few months about leadership," and they'd be like, "I don't even know who you're talking about." Like I would mention these other leaders and other people who were earning more money than me, who were like more senior leaders, couldn't even have a conversation with me around leadership because they just didn't. It wasn't something they were passionate about, and I think that that's been my entrepreneurial. That's when I was maybe it's not leadership that I'm trying to be good at. Maybe I should be an entrepreneur because then I don't have to deal with people who aren't in love with what they do. So I find that a stumbling block for me.
yeah, definitely, man. So, where were we at? Yeah, so I would say that's the biggest thing, and it's taken a while for me to make that shift. I'm still not fully, because it took me a few years to make this realization, man. Because like there was a few years where it was just, when you first start in business, it's basically just like you're just putting out fires, basically,
Yeah.
for lack of a better word. You're just sort of like, you know, you like, all right, I got to get an email list together. Okay, how do I start an email list? And then you spend the next few weeks like screwing around trying to get that done. Then it's like that doesn't work, and it's like, okay, how do I actually get these emails to convert into phone calls? And you spend a couple of months going down that rabbit hole,
Yeah.
and it's just like a constant steep learning curve up the steep learning curve up the steep learning curve. Um, but then you get to a point where it's just like, okay, so this is what it's like to be a business owner. Like I just have to deal with this chaos.
Yeah, I know. I love that because you're constantly on a steep learning curve, just always. But
Yeah,
you as you take action and learn, you build these capabilities that give you more confidence. And who I was this time last year as a business owner compared to who I am this year as a business owner is day and night. But I would argue that kind of the same growth would have taken me maybe 2 or 3 years of in a corporate job, but entrepreneurship, you grow or you die. It's like
yeah.
if you've got no option. So anything else to add in that story about, is that where you're at today? Is there anything that you've talked about that switch from employee to entrepreneur? You say you're still kind of dealing with it and coming to the realization of that. So is there, if I was to ask you right now today, what's the biggest issue you're dealing with? Is that still part of it, or is it more technical to do with your actual skill set and your offer when it comes to ghostwriting and client
No,
work?
no. Right now, what I've noticed right now is I actually have like a problem that I didn't even anticipate, which is that I have too much work. Like, you know, I enjoy what I do, and it pays very well. And I don't really spend too much time working as such as I used to. At the same time, I feel that right now my time is sort of all over the place. What I love about what I do is like being able to write. That's what I want to do. But like because I'm a ghostwriter, I spend most of my time writing for other people, not for myself.
Yeah,
And so I would like to get to a point next year where I'm doing less writing for other people and more and going back to my roots, which is just writing for myself, building my own brand, and selling my own products. Right now it's like, most of my income is it's agency stuff. Like I'm basically, most of my income is client work related,
yeah.
which is fine. I have great clients. I love my clients, but it's also it takes energy away from what I should be doing, which is building my own brand.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's a really good sort of struggle and pivot to have, because what you're doing is you're starting to ask yourself, well, what does success look like for me?
Exactly.
Where do I want to build bridges to? Because if you don't ask yourself that kind of question and have that kind of reflection, you can end up building bridges to destinations that you don't want to go, and you could end up with an
Yeah.
agency, and you're always working at other people's work, and you're never actually doing your passion. And from my perspective of knowing you, I sense that some of the threads that you write, especially the ones you do around movies and other things you talk about, you do sort of investigating journalism style threads sometimes on topics. That
Uh,
you get a lot of joy out of writing content for your own
yeah.
pleasure.
Yeah. Yeah, man. And this is the funny thing, Stephen. Like, you know how it is on Twitter and in the business world. If you're not hitting a certain revenue per month, like you sometimes you feel like a loser. You're like, oh man, like honestly, that's what it feels like. You're like, and so what I noticed was that this year, financially, I've made more money this year than any other year,
Brilliant. Well
and
done.
it didn't add any more. It didn't add that much more happiness, fulfillment, and joy to my life.
Mm-hmm.
It did a little bit, not gonna lie. Obviously, when you go from making 5, 10,000 a month to 10, 20 a month, it's life changing, right? But at the
Yeah.
same time, it's really, to me anyway. Like maybe I'm just wired differently, but like I don't see that much contentment in money for the sake of money. Like to me, there has to be an element. I mean, I know people say that you shouldn't chase your passions, and I agree with that to some degree, but I also think that in order to feel a sense of contentment, there has to be some sort of job satisfaction or contentment with what you do beyond money itself.
Yeah. I
Like
100%
I'm not
agree.
saying I'm not saying that if you love movies, like you have to do something within the movie industry. I'm not saying that at all, but like there should be some sort of pride in what you do and some sort of contentment in what you do.
Yeah, I know.
And to me, that's
Yeah,
number
it's.
one, and then like money's like just below that.
I really like that. I do like that because I feel very similar because I asked myself a question a while back, and I've blocked off a lot of things. There's certain things I don't do on Twitter because I've decided not to do it. Because I asked myself, what do I want to? What could I do for the rest of my life? If there's one skill or one talent that I have that I feel like I could do in my 60s and 70s and 80s, it's what I'm doing right now. It's coaching people one on one. It's having conversations with
Mm-hmm.
people.
Yep.
So my goal with once I decided what success looked like for me, it was like, well, I want to build this skill set and this runway, and if it takes me 2 or 3 years to get to a certain level that I want to get to, that's fine. So I'm just going to stick with it, and I have like things like a couple of years ago on Twitter, doing the Twitter growth stuff was very popular, and I decided, there's a lot of people around me doing that, and there's the people doing it are much better at it than me, and it would almost be disingenuous for me to do it because I don't actually care about it. I don't. It doesn't fill me with joy. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't want to wake up each day and like talk about Twitter growth. So I kind of like didn't involve myself in that world, and I focus
Yeah.
very much on one-on-one coaching. And that's my experience from what you're saying is like you're clarifying where you want to go and what works for you, and then you've got to go back to your original philosophy of sticking with the boring habits that actually get you there.
Exactly.
And so it's long-term thinking almost. The question I will
Absolutely.
add to that as sort of a segue onto that to sort of jump in a question there. You're talking about client work. You're talking about doing your own writing. If I could give you a realistic but magic wand, and you were talking about like your brand as well, if I could give you a Harry Potter moment, so to speak, and you could like magic yourself into the future in 18 months or a year, where do you want to take War on Weakness? Where do you want to take your brand? Where do you want to go with your own self performance? Where do you see yourself in the future? What are you moving towards today? What are you building momentum towards?
Yeah, man. So like I'm a very visual goal setter. I don't really pick numbers or anything like that. I just sort of like imagine in my mind's eye how I would want to, as you say, if I could wave a magic wand, how would I want to wake up tomorrow?
Yeah,
Like my idea of a perfect life is where I am making a certain income number at a low end, um, but at the same time I'm able to do a couple of hours of deep work a day
yeah,
and minimal. I'm the opposite of you. Like I don't like calls, so like minimum calls, maximum writing time, reading time,
yeah,
um, and that's pretty much what I want, man. Like I just want to be able to make a certain amount of money without having to, spread my energy over various clients. Just focus all of that energy on my brand and writing about things that I'm passionate about, I'm interested in. Um, and then, in terms of how I would monetize that, I think it will be a combination of digital products as well as high ticket coaching, like one-on-one coaching, which is something that's pretty new to me. I did that for the first time this year, and I actually got a lot more satisfaction from it than what I thought I would. Yeah,
yeah. I really like one-on-one coaching
yeah.
with people. It's
Did you
almost
have a
like a.
fear at the beginning, like with your first couple of clients? Sorry to cut you off. With your first couple of clients, did you have a fear of like maybe I can't deliver for this person?
Yeah, I have a fear
Is
right
that
now.
normal?
I
Yeah,
100%. I've actually got a couple of clients right now that are legitimately got multiple businesses and making millions of dollars. I'm a solopreneur who just has to look after his dog. Do you know what I mean? I'm talking to people, productivity and performance wise and structure, helping these people with their structure and getting clear on their vision. And they've made
yeah,
millions of dollars and created 2 or 3 businesses. And I'm now
yeah,
helping them. And so in the back of my mind, I'm like, oh, that's I haven't created $1 million a year business. That's my big goal. That's my goal of my coaching brand. That's my 10x keystone goal of what I want to do over the next 3 or 4 years is create $1 million a year coaching business or solopreneur brand, whatever that is. Stretch goal. I got to the 6 figures this year roughly. So it's a 10x of where I am today. But yeah, no, I don't want to call it imposter syndrome because I don't really believe in that because I think that's just like a weird fear. But yeah, no, I the first couple of clients I had was like, oh, what am I doing with these clients? But I think for me having a background in project management, I when I think about the 90 days or the 6 months that I work with people, initially a year and a half ago when I was first coaching people, I was doing a 90-day package with 12 sessions. That was my baseline. I think I was charging $3,000 for that. But I actually mapped out exercises and a journey and a destination. So I had these tools already built. So when I started coaching somebody, I wasn't just like doing it on the fly. I actually had a destination set that I wanted to take somebody, and I had these tools to help me get there. And that really helped me. Now, my journey now with clients is a lot different. It's bespoke, one-on-one. It depends where they want to go. But it's down to the individual and where they want, what the results they want to achieve.
Yep.
But yeah, no, it was one-on-one. The first time I did it, you're like, oh, okay, well, what are we doing here? What's happening? But again, it's like for me, I'm a performance coach, so it's like, well, the end goal is to improve the person's performance. So how are you going to do that? For you, you're probably helping someone become a better writer. Is that what you're doing? Your one-on-one package?
Yeah, so like basically it was a beta test run, but I was helping a couple of people grow their Twitter accounts.
Okay.
Now, after I signed about four of them. I was just like, I'm not going to get results for these people. Like, I have no idea what I'm doing. And two of them got amazing results. And that's what gave me the confidence. I was like,
Yes.
shit, okay, all right, maybe I can actually do this. It's not as scary as I thought it was. It's just about, to me, coaching is like half of the challenge is finding winners before they become like superstars.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's a really good point. And I think for me, one of the reasons who I target with my offer keeps getting smaller and smaller and smaller because I'm noticing the exact people that the exact business owners that I help who I actually get really good results with. And I'm starting to notice even on calls with people, I'm like, my offer's not really for this person because I'm not going to get this person results. So it's like almost like where I would clamor maybe to sign that person up to some type of life coaching or performance. Like everybody jumps on a call. I'm like, I've got to sign this person. Now I'm like, I don't know. I don't think I want to work for this person because I don't think this is the right fit for me. And I don't think that what I actually do is really going to help people or help this person specifically. So it's almost like if without actually starting and doing one-on-one coaching, you don't actually really know who you're doing it for until you keep doing it. So the people that you got really good results in, it's like you review them and be like, well, why were they the perfect fit? Who were they? What industry were they working in? What was their mindset, their age, whatever that is, and then you then try to duplicate that client over and over again.
Exactly. So so you were asking me about where I wanted to go with my business. Yeah, that's my ideal situation where I make, most of my income selling my own products through my own brand, but also doing a little bit of high ticket coaching on the side.
Yeah. The one thing I'll say when you were talking about how you want life to look, and this is something I was very I liked a lot when you were saying it, Eddie. You actually talked about how you want to feel on a daily basis. You talked about how you want to spend your time. That is brilliant, by the way, because that's success. That's making success visible or clear for how you actually want to feel. The amount of people I speak to when I ask them where they want to go in their life, and they give me vague answers. Not necessarily on a podcast, but maybe on a discovery call or when I'm just generally talking to people and they're asking for my help and they hit me up on Twitter and we jump on a call. When I ask them what their future is, it's numbers, it's fugazi, it's things, it's material, it's. You went straight to, I want to get up in the morning, do some deep work, hang out with my girlfriend. I want to feel good. I want to have my own, you have no idea that's actually how you're meant to do it because that is, you're verbalizing your goals in a way that you're succeeding in them daily. Because you're getting the deep work done, you're feeling good, you're running your own schedule. So that's really good. Just wanted to call that out. That's.
Yeah, I appreciate that, man. Like, and I think that I've definitely like brainwashed, like memed myself into like thinking the other way because like I said, especially if you're on Twitter, like I said at the beginning of the call, if you're like 10, 15, 20K a month in your business, sometimes you feel like a loser, right? Whereas the way I see it, like if it's context specific, right? If you're
Yeah.
somebody with zero online experience and you're making $5,000 a month from in the first 6 months of online business, you're doing exceptionally well compared to the rest of society. Like there are people who spend 5 years going through university, working their way up a job to get the $5,000 a month at a job.
Yeah.
So if you can do that with a Twitter account, like in 6 months' time, you're actually doing pretty well. And so I think that, as you say, like I've always been a very visual thinker. I don't set goals based on numbers and objects. Like I set goals based on like what movie do I want to be living in? That's how
Like
that's
that.
how I see it. Honestly, that's literally how I see it. I imagine myself like, how do I want to wake up tomorrow? Like, what time do I want to wake up? What sort of weather do I want to wake up to? What emotions do I want to be feeling throughout the day?
Mm. Yeah, I that's for me that's the you've got the macro goal of maybe numbers you want to make, products you want to sell,
Yeah, yeah,
brand numbers you want to have. That's the macro goal. But the micro goal is actually, well, how do you want to feel each day? What are the habits and systems and rules that you have that actually make you feel fulfilled? And those are actually the things that are going to move you towards your goal. Your goals. Those are the things that are going to give you momentum. So I love how you think about that. And at this point, because you mentioned movies, I'm just going to completely go off on a tangent here, and I'm going to ask you a random question. For me, on Twitter, I look around and I see some absolutely fabulous storytellers, writers, content creators that are just like amazing. And we've got AI now as well coming in, and artificial intelligence writing fantastic stories. You can't even tell the difference. You get the AI template and then you put your own stuff around it. You wouldn't even know the difference. Question I have for you then: why are modern movies so shit? Why is the writing in modern movies and TV shows so bad if we know so much about the story, the hero's journey, story branding, storytelling? How do they get it wrong so often in modern movies these days? What are your thoughts on that? As a copywriter, as somebody who's a fantastic storyteller with your threads, who hits all the points of the hero's journey as you help your clients with their brands, what do you think's gone wrong? With the general.
yeah. There's actually I could spend hours talking about this. There's actually a lot of different problems, but let's call it the obvious one. So, like a couple of obvious ones is that people, I think that Hollywood, the way Hollywood is run these days, like it's not run by artists. Like there used to be a time when artists, directors would have a lot of creative input about how they want the movie to look like.
Yeah.
Whereas now it's like it's very much like a numbers game. You're like,
Mm-hmm.
all right, we're gonna spend this much money on the movie on this movie project, because a movie it's essentially a business. Like
Yeah.
you invest investors put money into it, they expect a certain return out of it.
Yes.
So that's another thing. Like for example, look at the franchise business,
Yes.
right? I think we had franchises in the 80s and the 90s, but like not like they are today. So the way they monetize franchises today is that they do something like Harry Potter, right? So Harry Potter, you're not just making money from the movies, you're making money from the merchandising and all of that comes from the power of that franchise.
Yeah.
That's why they create so many like trilogies. They just force it upon us these days.
Yeah.
When it's just not necessary. So I would say the financing part of it is definitely a huge part of the equation that's destroying the creativity inside Hollywood. But the one thing from a movie specific standpoint, like they just don't write interesting characters anymore. They don't know how to develop interesting action and like the CGI and the graphics that they don't think about, as human beings, what makes a certain movie or a certain story relatable to us.
Yeah.
It's the characters and like the journey they go through. Okay, I'll give you a little example of this. So I was born in '85, so I'm 37. So the first Disney movie I ever watched was Aladdin. I was 7 years old when Aladdin came out, and so I decided to rewatch that movie. like 2 weeks ago because it just happened to be on TV, and I hadn't seen Aladdin since I was a kid, so I was like, oh, I'm gonna watch Aladdin, and it blew me away, like how powerful it still is, even if it's like just like crappy
Yeah.
graphics. It doesn't have that fancy CGI, 3D technology that Pixar Animations creates these
Yeah.
days, which is wonderful. But it's just like it's old school '90s cartoon, right? But the character of Aladdin and that story of like this poor guy who makes a beautiful princess fall in love with him, and then he you've seen the movie, right, Stephen?
Oh yeah, I know the story. The Aladdin. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and then he tries to become something he's not by pretending to be this fancy prince.
Yeah.
And he realizes that it was actually being him, just being authentic, that made the princess fall in love with him, and then so he basically stops being a prince and yada yada yada. But like I asked myself, why is Aladdin such a great movie? It's because the story, that classic story of just being yourself and being and creating a likable character like Aladdin, that's what resonates with the audience,
Yeah.
not the fancy designs or how good the movie looks aesthetically. It's the actual character. It's creating a memorable character that millions of people can relate to.
Mm.
So like right now, Hollywood creates these characters, these models that of like the perfect woman or the perfect man,
Yeah.
and it's not relatable because real life people are not like that,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
If you look at a classic movie like Die Hard, I mean, if you look at what's the character's name in Die Hard?
John
John
McClane.
McClane.
Yeah.
If you look at John McClane, John McClane's not like this handsome, like
He's
shredded
he's a
six-pack.
broken man.
He's a broken man.
Yeah.
He's divorced. He's like semi out. He's probably an alcoholic.
Yeah.
He's a chain smoker. He doesn't have. He's probably got a bit of a flab. If you took, when he takes off his shirt, he's a bit flabby.
Yeah.
He's not like a. He doesn't look like a Marvel superhero, right?
Yeah.
Because real life people are not Marvel superheroes.
Yeah.
Okay. What's being a hero is not being it's not being a superhero. Being a hero is trying to become the best version of yourself, despite all the
All your
human
flaws.
flaws that you
Yeah.
have. And so
Yeah.
like all the movies back in the day, your Indiana Joneses, your Star Wars, your Godfather, all that.
Yeah.
All those characters that we
Lethal
love,
Weapon
they're
reminds
all,
me.
they're all,
Yeah.
they're all deeply flawed human beings.
Yeah.
But yet, despite those flaws, they're able to do something good in
Yeah.
their life. And that's what makes them relatable. And that's what makes them real heroes. Whereas now, the heroes these days, they're like the movie equivalent of an Instagram model. It's like this forced aesthetic perfection.
Only
that
MCU.
it's just fake. It's just not realistic.
Yeah.
And so they're not memorable. None of these stories, none of these movies, none of these characters are memorable.
Yeah, yeah. I think out of the MCU, the only one that really was memorable to me, who really went on a arc, which they kind of actually I think cut out of the third movie a little bit, was Tony Stark.
Yes, exactly.
He's
So
an
what makes
alcoholic.
Tony Stark unique.
Yeah. Tony Stark is the one that stands out because he was. He first of all he went through the first hero's journey of like deciding not to fire weapons anymore because of his experience, and then when he saved the Avengers in the Avengers movies, he ends up with like a PTSD and he becomes a drunk. And I think they actually cut that scene out of the movie. There's a scene actually in the that was cut out that he gets drunk and he's in his suit, and his buddy, who's the other guy who's got a suit, the guy from the U.S. Army, I can't remember what he's called, his character, War Machine, I think, I can't remember. It's been years since I've seen the movie. He actually has to like calm him down, and they actually cut that scene out of the movie because it really showed that Tony Stark had spiraled out of control, and was using alcohol as a way. And I thought, why would you cut that out? It really made him a lot more relatable. It was almost like Robert Downey Jr.'s own journey in life, so to speak. And out of all the MCU characters, I honestly cannot reference another one that had a very unique, powerful, relatable, multiple up and downs story. The rest of them, as you said, they're cut and paste. They're too clean. It's like one sad thing happened to them and they became a hero.
That's why go on to the superhero analogy, this is why Batman's so popular, right? Because he's
Yes.
the most human of the superheroes. He's just a
Yeah.
regular guy, right? And he's got a fear of bats, right? And so there's that relatability because we all fear something. Of the X Men, who's the one most popular? Wolverine.
Yeah.
Well, what's
Super
Wolverine
flawed.
got in common with us? Well, he was just a regular guy, right? They
Yeah.
basically kidnapped him and turned him and like injected that web material into him and turned him
Yeah.
into a superhero. But but yeah, why is Wolverine so popular? The most popular X Men. Why is Batman the most popular Superman superhero? Because they're relatable.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. Good conversation. I wanted to dive off there because I know you're a bit of a movie buff and you're really into that. And I myself have I do like reminiscing and going back. I mean, I was born in the '80s, so I a little bit older than you, but I definitely grew up on those movies as well. And if you're asking my top 10 list, movies like Predator and stuff drop in there because it's just like so influential in my Aliens, the first two, Alien and Aliens. They're so influential on me. And yeah, and even the early Star Wars ones, but I'll not get deep into that because I don't really watch the Star Wars stuff anymore. But yeah, it's such an impact on me. And even now, when I watch a lot of modern movies, they just don't seem to, like, one of my favorite movies of all time. Clint Eastwood, who I respect so much as a character, is Unforgiven, and
Oh,
every single character in that movie is flawed and overcoming some lie or bullshit or dark past. Even the bad guys, the
yeah,
good guys, everybody's flawed. Nobody's
yeah,
perfect, and pretty much everybody dies. It's
yeah.
a great movie.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
That's the first film he directed, I think.
Was
Unforgiven.
it Unforgiven one of his first movies he directed? That's because
I
classic.
think so. I think so. Yeah, it's
I
an
might have
amazing
to,
film.
yeah, I might have to go back and watch it. It's been a couple of years. I think I watched it when the pandemic hit a couple of years ago when we were stuck in the house. And I was just going through all the old movies, but Unforgiven just stands out for me as one of those. Like, that's a proper movie, a proper western.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. And sorry, just to finish up this point, like I think a lot of films, Matt Damon actually mentioned this in an interview. They're they're made they're made to watch on like your iPad or like to watch on TV on Netflix and stuff
Yeah,
because that's just the nature of the business
that's the
now.
medium. Yeah,
Whereas like a lot of filmmakers these days, like it's very rare is where there's a film where you're like, I have to go watch that in cinema.
yeah,
So there's a big difference between creating a movie and creating what I call a cinematic experience. So
yeah.
I don't know if you watched the latest Top Gun, but
That's a
like that
cinematic
actually
experience. That
that's a cinematic experience. That's an
experience.
experience. That's a
It's a good
film where
movie.
you go, okay, if you have to go to the cinema to watch that,
Yeah, I watched it
right?
when it came out on the
You know,
downloads there, but that was a great movie. I think it's on streaming sites now. Top Gun. That was like I was there was so for me I was nostalgic because again Top Gun. It's in that because I don't know as a kid I used to love the Hot Shots movies. Was it the ones that take
yeah,
the piss?
yeah,
The
with
ones that
Charlie
take the
Sheen.
piss? Yeah, they take the piss out of all the like those type of action movies. I think it was Hot Shots Part Two. It just and Top Gun was one of the movies that they just mocked. Predator,
Yeah,
Rambo, all it was, yeah. So it's kind of funny that it got a lot of nostalgia with that movie. It was very well done, very well done. So to get back onto what we're talking about, Twitter business with your growth and everything. When it comes to storytelling, and when it comes to sort of what you know about it, how do you apply that? Something that I'm learning a lot. I'm doing a lot of story brand stuff. Donald Miller, don't know if you've ever come across him. I'm trying to learn how to tell more stories within my
yeah,
brand. And Donald,
yeah.
Donald Donald Miller has a great book around that called Story Branding. But I'll ask you, I've got you on a podcast. You're an expert in this area. How do you use the hero's journey or storytelling devices to help grow brands on Twitter and online?
Okay, so it goes back to what I was saying before about the movie. So it's all about relatability, right? The reason why you could get the most knowledgeable. Let's just say I'm growing a brand for a fitness coach. Okay,
Yeah,
everything you know about to know about fitness is on the internet already. Like
yeah,
you can only talk so much about um, counting your macros, eating your protein. Like it's like the science doesn't change. Like
Yes.
fat loss, everyone knows. If you know a little bit about fitness, everyone knows how to lose fat. You gotta lift. You gotta eat enough good protein. You gotta eat whole foods. You gotta get your steps in. Like it's
Yeah.
very basic. But what makes one fitness coach different from another? It's 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 the unique lens of their experience, and that's where the storytelling comes into play,
Yeah.
right? So, like, if you're able to um, share your story and be and like really put yourself out there, that's going to naturally attract people who can relate, anyone who can relate to your story. So
Hmm.
let's just say your story is that you were somebody who was fat and then you basically went on this journey and then now you're like this Jack Chad guy.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, well, what's gonna make your content resonate with people who may want to work with you?
Yeah.
People may want to work with you. They're fat themselves, and so like, you need to speak to like, how did you feel when you were in that position? How did you feel when you were fat? What sort of challenges did you face? How did you overcome those challenges? What sort of insecurities did you have? Because that's
Hmm.
what's going to make you relatable. And when you have that relatability, that builds trust, and then from that trust, that's how you get clients. Because people don't just pay two, three, four, $5,000 to a stranger on the internet. They pay it to a stranger on the internet who they can trust. And how do you
Yeah.
build that trust? You build it through stories, because stories is kind of like a way to codify your experience.
Mm. I like that.
That's how I describe it. So like, it's kind of like, hey, Stephen, like, this is my experience. This is my experience codified. Here, you download this code to your brain. Like that's what a
Yeah.
story is.
Your unique NFT
So
is your
like, if
story.
yeah, and yeah, I guess that's a good analogy to think of it. But like, if you don't have that, if you don't have that storytelling element of your brand, then it's going to be very difficult for you to build that trust, that layer of trust that allows you to, get into a monetary transaction with some stranger on the internet.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. That's a really good answer. I mean, that's great. I
Yeah.
think it's almost
All
like
right,
going back.
let's apply this to politics, Stephen. So, like, why do we like to pretend that we vote for this politician because they have the best policy? It's bullshit. Like, we vote for the politician because we like them.
Yeah.
We like them.
We see
Why do we
ourselves in
like
them.
them? Because there's just something about. Maybe it's bullshit. Maybe it's just that they have very good campaign managers. But there's something about their story that you relate to. And if you study political campaigns, most of the campaign has very little to do with policy and everything to do with like storytelling.
Yeah. Yeah. Very much so. They very much create a us versus them as part of their narrative, and they just hope that enough of the us's that they want vote for them. And
Exactly.
that's there's their story behind that. So yeah, I like that a lot. So it's almost like when you go referencing, we talked about Aladdin there, from Disney. It's almost like you want to tell your Aladdin story of how you went from being fat to thin and how you got it wrong and all the missteps that you used, and actually what the reality was after all the trials you went through. It was this simple 5-step process that actually helped you. But you had to go through all those trials and error to actually create that 5-step process. So it's that connects a lot more than just tweeting out fitness platitudes in that example.
Exactly right. Exactly right. And so, man, I wish I remember the quote exactly, but like a writer I used to look up to. He had a great quote. I'm paraphrasing it, but something like if you want to earn green as a money,
Yeah,
you need to be able to bleed red, which means like you need to be able to tell your story and like be vulnerable.
yeah,
Because like a part of storytelling is not like I said, the reason why these Marvel movies and stuff don't do very well is because they're not telling a story, they're selling propaganda. They're basically like painting this picture perfect character, this picture perfect world that doesn't exist. Whereas a real story, it's ugly. There's bits where there's parts where you're down, there's parts where you're vulnerable. And so if you're not willing to talk about those things where you're just being vulnerable, even if it's something like Twitter growth. Every Twitter
Yeah.
growth guru talks about how hard it was at the beginning because that's what makes them relatable to their customers. Because their customers have zero followers, they're not getting any engagement, they're not getting any growth, they're not getting any responses from your DMs. And so, like, even if you're just a Twitter growth guru, you have to talk about how difficult it was for you at the beginning because that's where the relatability comes in, and that's the element of your story that makes your customers believe in you and believe in what you have to sell.
Yeah, no, it's really true. That is really true. You have to sell the relatability. It's almost like I hear a lot of people always talking about, talk about your struggles, talk about where you were a year or 2 years ago, and talk about how you solved that, and then put that out into the world. And the next thing you know, you've got a bunch of clients that are a year or 2 years behind you, and then you're solving their problems for you. So it's a very good way to sort of get your first couple of clients is to think about, well, what struggles did I overcome? What was my story? What's my journey? And then let's talk about that, and then show people how you actually became successful.
Exactly right.
Good. A great conversation there around storytelling. I mean, it's something I'm very switched on to at the moment because I really feel like the uniqueness of standing out. It's very noisy out there. It's a very noisy space, and I think that to really get deep and get to those, because I go straight to the high ticket offer, and to really get to those high ticket clients, I've really got to show not only that I'm capable of taking people and showing my client results, but also showing the trials, tribulations, and struggles that I've overcome that has got me to this point today. And I think storytelling is an art that I think every content creator needs to learn.
Yeah, man. At the end of the look, man, I'll give you a little example, right? So when I try and sell digital products, whether it's through email or whatever, I have a tendency, because I have my blind spots, like sometimes to just like talk about like the features of the product.
Yeah.
Like this course has this, and that. It's gonna have this modules. It's got this many hours of video footage. Your customers don't give a shit about that. Whereas if I just tell a simple story of like, here's a guy who was broke. He bought the course. He was like at a job he hated, and then he applied the course, and then he quit his job, and now he's living the life of his dreams. And I just plug the link to the product. Like that's when I sell more than trying to like oversell the features of the product.
Yeah.
Tell a simple story of like, here's a guy without the product. He bought the product. Here's what happened to his life after the product. Here's the link to the product that he bought. Like,
yeah, it
sells the product for you.
It sounds so simple, but it is. It's just to explain the results, explain how people use it, tell the story, get more people, so you can tell more stories, and it's just a continuation of collecting stories and talking about them.
Exactly.
That is the way. That is the way. So with that said, what if I could ask you, getting back into your journey, we've talked about where you want to go. We've talked about storytelling. We dived into movies there for a little bit, But if I could ask you, what do you think is the biggest thing standing in the way of your next success right now? What is the thing that if I could sell you a magic pill right now to get rid of it, like pop, boom, what would that pill do for you?
Man, I think honestly, like it really is just it's really just on me to sort this out. But if you could sell me one pill, it's just to get my time back on this time I spend doing client work.
Mm-hmm.
And then because the problem I face right now is like it's not that massive of a problem. Like I know I just have to like eventually slow down client work, and then my income will hopefully suffer for a few months. And then I'll build out a new income stream that's underneath my own that's only underneath my own banner. But if you give me a magic pill, man, maybe it would just be to more time, man. More time. I need. That's really all I need. More time back to myself.
Yeah, and I feel that. I think at the moment my magic pill would probably have to be really getting into deep work. I feel like I do maybe one little 30 minute to an hour a day, and then I struggle to get back into it. I yearn for those really deep 2-3 hours of getting into flow. At the moment, I've struggled with that over the last month or so. I mean, COVID is probably a reason for it, but yeah, that would be my magic pill.
Definitely, man.
Definitely.
Yeah, I'm excited to see what happens in 2023 for the both of us.
Yeah, no, same, man. I'm very, very, very excited. I'm rolling into 2023 in a great position. You are as well, so I'm very excited to see where you go with your business. I know we've been chatting for about an hour, so I'll ask you a couple of handful of like sort of wrap up questions. The first one is what is a contrarian view that you have, maybe with self-performance, maybe with personal development, maybe even with copywriting or storytelling? Where do you push back against the norm? So for my example would be, I push back against optimization. There's lots of like productivity coaches that talk about optimize your calendar. I honestly think optimization is something that Usain Bolt does, or Elon Musk does, or the British cycling team doing the Tour de France does. It's like optimization is something that you're taking something from an elite level to an even more elite level. But to get to optimization, there's about 20 steps that you should be doing. First, getting your focus, your goals, getting yourself understand what success is, whatever that is. So I push back on optimization because that's where a lot of people start. So that's my contrarian view for my specific area or niche of interest. But in your area, in your life, where would you normally push back on the normal advice, on the typical advice?
You actually stole mine because that was the example I was going to give. I'll give you a subcategory of what you just told me.
Sorry, man.
I actually love to make fun of. That's okay. I don't know if you've seen the IQ distribution meme.
Yeah.
I made a version of that the other day, a couple of months ago, where the midwit, the one in the middle,
yeah,
it was like this complicated productivity app thing where you've got your Notion, you've got your Evernote.
I think I remember seeing that online.
Notes, and you've seen that one, right? Where they're just zapping from one app to the other, read wise and all that sort of shit.
Yeah.
And like the high IQ and the low IQ people is like, I wake up and get things done.
Yeah.
So I've tried every productivity app you can imagine. Like I've tried organizing my life with the Notion and like over planning everything. Like to me,
pen and bit of paper.
This is my productivity app, guys.
Yeah.
This is notebook, and this. Look at this. We call this. Where I grew up, this is called a pen.
A pen.
Right? We use
mind blowing. Mind blowing.
This is called paper. And with this, I run a multiple six-figure business with this paper and pen and Google Docs.
Funny, I do a similar thing.
Yeah. So I think to extrapolate what you just said, I think my contrarian view is that, especially in the postmodern world where we have so much information because of the internet, like we're drowning in information. We're drowning in optimization.
Yeah.
We're drowning in noise, man.
Yeah.
So it's the same thing with fitness. Okay.
Yes.
Like it's very, very easy to fall into a trap of just, I want to be in a keto diet. I need to take 20 different fucking supplements. I need my fish oil. I need my magnesium. I need my I don't know if you follow health Twitter. I was actually telling a health Twitter guy the other day. I said, listen, man, the problem with you health Twitter guys is that I go on health Twitter, and if I'm not taking 100 supplements, my meat is not. If I'm not eating grass-fed beef, if I'm not drizzling fucking truffle oil over my steak, if I'm just eating regular white rice instead of basmati rice, and my water doesn't come from a fucking glass bottle, it comes from a regular plastic bottle, like I'm going to fucking die.
Shocking news for you, you're gonna die anyway. So
yeah, and so again, it comes back to like we just overcomplicate things, man. Like you don't need all that shit to be healthy. Just eat real food. Don't eat processed garbage. Exercise. Do some sort of, if it's just playing sport, do that. You like to jog, do that. Do some sort of exercise. Don't just sit around your ass all day. Eat real food. Eat what grown-ups are supposed to eat. Everyone knows how to eat healthy. Let's not bullshit about that.
Yeah.
Make sure you sleep. Like, don't abuse alcohol. Don't abuse drugs. You're good, man. You don't need everything else. Is just a bonus.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing with business. Like most of the fancy shit that you think you need because some guru wrote a thread about it. Have you ever heard of JOMO?
No, I'm not sure. No, I don't think I have.
So FOMO is the fear of missing out.
Yeah, yeah, I know FOMO.
JOMO is the joy of missing out.
The joy. Oh, I love that.
So basically,
The joy of missing out. You know what? I've never heard that before. That's great. I really like that.
some marketer invented that one.
Yeah.
So JOMO, the joy of missing out, is basically like just ignoring all of the fad diets, ignoring all whatever the latest shit is in your niche. Just ignore it.
Yeah.
Just stick to the fundamentals.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, because that resonates very much with me. I have a deep appreciation for that because, again, my main core message is do less dumb shit. And my problem, again, with the product, with the personal development industry per se, is it's all about more habits, new habits, do this, do that. And I'm like, no, the biggest wins you get in your life is when you actually remove the majority of the shit that's holding you back, mentally, emotionally, physically, whatever that is.
Yeah.
You know, and the same with fitness, guys. If you just stopped eating all this shit food, if you just stopped binge eating, if you just stopped, like, if you did a little bit of fasting, if you stopped doing, eating 6 meals a day or snacking, stop drinking beer, stop drinking alcohol for a while, all that weight would just disappear. You wouldn't have to go to the gym. It would, it's and again, removal's always been so much more powerful, but there's this like real weird, I don't know if it's pervasive in culture or society, that it's do something new, and everybody's got a new feature or a new program or a new thing to sell you. JOMO, love it. Joy of missing out, because 90% of what's out there is pointless. Love it. It's really, really good.
Yeah, man. So 2023 New Year's resolution, man. Less FOMO, more JOYMO.
More JOYMO. I love it. I love it. JOMO. I love it. Okay. So wrapping this up, because I don't know how long we've been talking. So I'm if the whole world was going to wear a T-shirt for a day, a printed T-shirt, what would you have printed on that T-shirt for that day?
All right, we're gonna go full circle. I think on the T-shirt, I'm gonna say something like, how would I explain this? Stick to boring because boring works.
Stick to boring because boring works.
And I don't give a shit if that's like the most boring fucking T-shirt. That is the most useful T-shirt that will save your life.
Honestly, man, some of the ones I've had other people say is like, get shit done. Mine's do less dumb shit. Stick to the boring because boring works. I love that. The thing is that again, the theme of the conversation, it's the simple stuff that works. It's the simple, to the point. Almost platitudes to a sense, but they're more. Yeah. They're less fluffy and more just like platitudes. Yeah, yeah. Pragmatic.
That's a good name for my next course.
Pragmatic platitudes. I love it. Get Twitter. Open a new Twitter account. Start pumping them out.
The sales copy is going to be: yes, this is a product about platitudes. Yes, I'm a guru. Yes, I'm selling. I'm charging $100 for this for you.
Yeah, well, $99.97 or something. $99.97. I love it. Yeah, so stick to the boring because the boring works. Eddy, it's been an absolute pleasure connecting with you, having a chat with you, having you on the podcast. I love your work. I love what you're doing. I'm so happy for all your success over the last year. You've had your best year. Keep it going. For anybody listening to this podcast, tell them about your offer. Tell them about where they can find you. Yeah.
So best way to find me is on Twitter. It's @WarOnWeakness, one word. If you are an entrepreneur and you've got a high ticket offer and you're looking to scale that through Twitter and you don't have time to spend on Twitter, send me a DM. Or if you want to learn more about, what I have going on with my brand, join my email list. Just join.eddyquan.com.
Cool. I will put all that in the show notes below. I highly recommend jumping on Eddy's email list. Some good stuff always comes out from that. And obviously, if you're not following on Twitter, why not? I remember when I first started following you, you used to have, oh my God, what was the 80s movie? I've totally forgotten his name.
Escape from New York.
Escape from New York, but yes.
Snake Plissken.
Yeah, great movie. Again, a flawed character.
Yes,
who over very very much of a '90s kind of character. I mean, I mentioned Lethal Weapon. I was thinking about
yeah,
the kind of like the crazy guy who is able to pull it together and win the day.
exactly.
But yeah, it's great, man. And the wrap up. Any questions that I didn't ask you that I should have asked you?
Not really, man. Like, I'm actually, you know what? I was actually, I had no idea because I knew you were a productivity, not productivity guy, but you were a performance guy. So I was like, so I asked these questions about performance, and I was a bit nervous. Like, I didn't know what questions you were going to ask me because I never really think of my performance really from that lens. So I was a little bit nervous, but I was quite surprised, pleasantly surprised by the questions. And yeah, man, it's been a great conversation, man. Like, it's always nice chatting with you. Um, but yeah, I hope the podcast does well. And yeah, man, I'm looking forward to talking to you again soon.
I appreciate it, Eddie. It's a small podcast. To be honest, and even the people listening to this, they can hear this. One of the reasons why I started is so I can have more conversations with people like yourself. I can reach out and actually talk to other content creators, people who I'm friendly with, or people who I want to build deeper relationships with. And I recommend anybody listening to this, if you want to actually, have deep conversations and learn more about what people do, starting a podcast is a great way to do it. Like some of the stuff that I've had conversations around with some other creators.
That's one of the projects that's kind of like, I don't know, it's like it's on the back of my mind for sure.
Yeah.
Definitely on the list.
Yeah, I've got it's good fun, and I get talking till the cows come home. So
Yeah,
I love having a conversation with people.
and I think that with AI that we touched upon briefly, with that getting more powerful, like I think podcasts are going to get even bigger than they already are.
Yeah, yeah, it's that authenticity. It's the storytelling. It's connecting to an actual human. It's actually getting to see whether the person who puts out that content actually is the mind behind the content, because you could quite easily in this world now create a virtual reality version of how smart you are by using artificial intelligence, but then can you actually back that up with results and good conversation and formulate your own ideas, when you're talking to people one-on-one. So I would definitely agree with you of that you know the us as humans is never going to be replaced by artificial intelligence, in my opinion.
No, I'm with you all the way. I'm definitely an optimist. I think if anything, it's good for society because it's going to force people like us to level up and be more authentic.
Hmm.
If you're somebody who's like afraid of AI, you're afraid of being authentic.
Yeah,
That's
that
the,
that
that's the real problem. That's the real problem. And AI is just basically forcing you to become more authentic.
I love that. I love that. A thread coming soon on that topic, Eddie.
That's a great.
Possibly.
I'm gonna write it down. I'm gonna write it down. Yeah,
I
yeah.
would love to read that. That is right down your alley. I would love to read that. That would be great. But anyway, absolute pleasure, Eddie. Thank you for having you on. Thank you for being on. Sorry, it was great talking to you, and I hope you have a fantastic Christmas and a fantastic New Year and an absolutely amazing, record-breaking 2023.
All right, you too, my friend. Thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, we'll talk soon. The SPS podcast is brought to you by the Pro Accelerator program, helping business owners and business leaders save at least 10 working hours a week, improve their focus, and make more money. If that sounds like something you're interested in, check out the show notes and follow the links.